Well, what color do you? Why would you choose? You serious about your black hair? You don't wear anything but black hair?
Well, I usually don't sleep. It's just
Good morning. I noticed some of you said good morning right away because you remember me from last year. But for those who didn't, we'll try it again. Good morning. Morning is such an important time of our day because morning means the dawn of something new, a new day, the beginning. And in the times that we live in, aren't y'all all ready for a new day? A new beginning, a change. Aren't you ready to be change agents for that new day where women of color are included and are leaders and are recognized for their accomplishments and their contributions? Isn't it a good morning? Thank you. I'm Rachel Dawson. I'm the Managing Director of Precision Health at the University of Michigan and one of the members of the executive team for the Women of Color Task Force. And it's my absolute honor to welcome all of you graceful, powerful, energetic women and you supportive and empathetic men to our 38th Annual Career Conference. Thank you for joining us. It is opportune that the Task Force 38th Annual Career Conference takes place today on March 6th because it is also Employee Appreciation Day. This holiday is annually celebrated on the first Friday of March and was established in 1995 by the National Association for Employee Recognition. So I say to my colleagues who are supervisors, appreciate your staff today and every day. And I say to my fellow colleagues, I say appreciate yourself, your individual journey, your successes, and all that you have overcome to make it to this point. Let's give yourselves a round of applause. As we start today's program, the Women of Color Task Force and CEW acknowledge that the University of Michigan was formed and has grown through connections with the land stewarded by the Niswi, Ishkandawan, and Nishibag, the three Fires people, who are Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, along with their neighbors, the Seneca, Delaware, Shawnee, and Wyandot nations. This year's theme is Women on a Mission 2.0, Leadership, Citizenship, and Advocacy. And as we stand on their land, we want to celebrate our indigenous sisters for their significant contributions to the advancement of women as citizens and leaders. So as we acknowledge the 100th year of suffrage in the United States for women, we also want to acknowledge that before Lucretia Mott and her crew helped draft the Declaration of Sentiments at the Seneca Falls Convention in 1848, they actually spent the summer with the Seneca Nation of our indigenous people, learning what true liberty and freedom look like, where women served as leaders and were fully integrated in the power structure of those nations and societies. So thank you, our indigenous people, for showing us the way. As we think about this year's conference, many will look at a 38th anniversary and say, there's nothing remarkable about that, 38. You know, we get excited about 40 and 50 and all of those big years. What's remarkable about 38? Except if you take time to think about the fact that we are living in remarkable times, under remarkable circumstances that causes remarkable women for 38 years to do this event, for 38 years to lift each other up, for 38 years to fight to be heard, for 38 years to fight for a seat at the table, for 38 years to look beyond themselves and reach out across this campus and say, I'm going to help bring others along. I think that's quite remarkable. So I think we ought to be excited about 38 years. So it is my privilege to recognize those remarkable women who have worked to make today possible. First, we want to recognize the members of the Women of Color Task Force. The task force is one of the oldest staff development networks in higher education in the nation, offering informal mentoring, monthly networking meetings, summer professional development workshops, and a fall leadership development retreat to support and develop UM staff. We are proud of our work. We are pleased to be part of the University of Michigan tradition of developing administrative leaders who carry out the research and learning mission of the university, which helps to set us apart as the leaders and the best. Will all the current members of the Women of Color Task Force please stand and remain standing? Thank you. These dedicated women support the task force by helping to plan this conference and other career development activities. Please give your colleagues a hand for all of their wonderful, impactful university service. Now will all who have served on the task force at any time over the past 38 years please stand? You all have laid the foundation for the work that we continue today. Thank you for your service and for laying that foundation for us. We especially want to acknowledge Kathy Conway Perrin, the Director of Academic Standards and Academic Opportunities, who served on the Women of Color Task Force executive team for many years and is retiring this spring. Please, let's acknowledge Kathy. These women in planning this year's program considered our remarkable situation to develop sessions and identify speakers that are, quite frankly, remarkable. So today we are excited that you will hear from two powerhouses in the persons of Dr. Joy DeGrew and Dr. Julianne Malvo, who will discuss how remarkable women can play a remarkable role in leadership and advocacy for voting rights. For voting rights. Michigan, we vote on Tuesday, voting rights. For education, for economic policy, and for prison reform. After hearing from these two brilliant women, we will send you to sessions to explore the next steps in your professional and personal life. So as you deal with the frustrations of exclusion and discrimination, you can develop a remarkable resilience that fuels you to continue to press on and yet achieve. You will be given networking opportunities where you will connect with remarkable women from around the state and around the campus so that you may be motivated. So we hope that at the end of the day, you recognize that you are remarkable and that you can go into your job, your community, and home and do remarkable things. So as we live in these remarkable times where discrimination on the basis of race and sex are normalized by our political leaders, where the rights of citizenships are threatened, and where women of color continue to be shut out of leadership, we urge you to take this day to tool up, to take courage, and tap into your remarkable so that you may offer the graceful yet strong leadership only women of color can. So be encouraged, sisters, to recognize that our contributions, our citizens, stands as the foundation of this nation, and they will not continue to undervalue our remarkable contributions. Be empowered, sisters, to boldly advocate for justice in your communities, equality in your workplaces, and recognition for your individual accomplishments. And be emboldened as leaders to act as agents of change wherever change is needed. Use your remarkable touch, use your remarkable skills to remind them, as our sister Sojourner Truth reminded the sisters at Seneca Falls, that ain't I a woman? Ain't you a woman? Ain't we remarkable women? And ain't it time to let us lead with our remarkable touch? Thank you. And now I'm excited to introduce to you the epitome of remarkable in the person of Ms. Janice Rubin, the staff program leader for the Women of Color Task Force, who offers remarkable leadership not only to the task force, but to a number of people across campus. Please help me welcome her to the podium.
Thank you, Rachel. I know next year not to follow you. Good morning, I'm Janice Rubin. I'm the staff program manager and the coordinator of the Women of Color Task Force. I bring you greetings on behalf of CEW staff and our director, Dr. Tiffany Mara. Tiffany could not be here today because she's on a 2-week trip in the Himalayas. But if she were here, I know that Tiffany would wish for each and every one of you a powerful and productive day of learning and networking. For more than 55 years, CEW has served as a beacon for persons looking to find a supportive network here at the University of Michigan. The center, through its workshops, advocacy initiatives, research on non-traditional students, scholarships, and outreach efforts, seeks to empower women and underserved individuals on campus and the surrounding communities by serving as an advocate and a resource provider to help them reach their academic, financial, and professional goals. A few years ago, the center changed its name, and some of our partners asked us why. And they asked us about the plus sign. While the plus in our name is silent, it does have significant meaning. It stands for the advocacy efforts of our remarkable founding director, the late great Jean Campbell, a strategic visionary who sought to offer educational access to faculty wives and other women returning to school. The plus stands for Women of Color Initiatives, the task force, and our faculty counterpart, the Women of Color in the Academy Project, that creates safe spaces, provide career development trainings, and highlights our members' professional accomplishments. The plus also stands for non-traditional students, those on campus who may have had a gap between high school and college, our student parents, veterans, commuters or part-time students, or the first ones in their family to complete a college degree. The center has several projects that support the academic success of students and the career success of faculty and staff. I hope you will take time to learn more about CEW by going to our website. The center can provide a space for all to feel a sense of community and belonging, whether you engage with our staff, attend special events like this conference, or visit our office for a career counseling appointment. In all that we do, CEW seeks to provide opportunities that empower you to reach your goals. So that means the plus is also you. As I close, I'd like to acknowledge the generosity of all our conference sponsors, because without their support, staff development and outreach events like this could not happen. We will hear briefly from our sponsors before the keynote is introduced. The UM conference sponsors are the Office of the Provost, Michigan Medicine, Precision Health at the University of Michigan, University Human Resources, Organizational Learning, and the CEW Francis and Sidney Lewis Visiting Leader Fund. The corporate sponsors are Golden Limousine, which provides complimentary shuttle service from the parking lot to the Michigan League, and our Platinum Plus corporate sponsor, TIAA, which has been a major supporter of CEW's educational programs and this conference for the past 17 years. So before the sponsors come to the podium to give their remarks, let's give them all a huge round of applause for their support of the Women of Color Task Force Conference. Next, we will hear from Sonia Jacobs, our Chief Learning Officer. Then we will hear from Rich Holcomb, our Associate Vice President for Human Resources. And then we will hear from Corey Pauling, TIAA Senior Vice President.
Good morning. I will first bring you greetings from Dee Hunt, our Chief Human Resource Officer from Michigan Medicine, who has a touch of the flu, not the concerning one. And so she asked if I would provide greetings on her behalf, and so I'm very, very honored to do that. And then I'll switch hats and bring greetings from myself and Organizational Learning. Good morning, happy Friday, and happy you could make this annual conference. I hope you are energized and ready to go. Sorry I could not be there with you today. However, I bring you greetings from the Michigan Medicine Executive Team, who sends their greetings and support to all of you, especially to Janice Rubin and the Planning Committee. Congratulations on celebration of the 38th Annual Women of Color Task Force Career Conference, Women on a Mission 2.0. Today, you have an opportunity to expand your knowledge and advance your career. Today, you are on a mission to listen, to learn, to share, to network, and to support those who are here and those who were not able to attend. As at previous conferences, we have excellent keynote speakers and workshop presenters ready to help you on your mission of leadership, citizenship, and advocacy. Enjoy your day and gather the wisdom that is in the room to add to your career growth and your journey to greater success. Best regards, D. Hunt, CHRO, Michigan Medicine. And so now, as I reflect on today's theme and its meaning for staff at Michigan Medicine and on the academic campuses, I considered the mission of the university to serve the people of Michigan and the world through preeminence in creating, communicating, and preserving and applying knowledge, art, and academic values, and in developing leaders and citizens who will challenge the present and enrich the future. In my role in organizational learning for Michigan Medicine and the academic campus, I believe the expectations model that is in your pamphlet, you have a development journey pamphlet in your bags, will help to provide common language around the leadership, citizenship, and advocacy behaviors we expect to see all members of University of Michigan demonstrate in service of that mission. You'll see the domains of mission, people, self, and execution outline the competencies and the level-specific behaviors we would demonstrate in service of leadership, citizenship, and advocacy. The only difference is the context where we apply them. So as you listen to keynotes and engage in today's workshop, think about your development plan and how you will apply your learning to assist the university and your own growth. I want you to advocate for yourself. The tools we provided will help you with self-directed learning. They will help you to connect to a variety of learning resources, not just the formal in-classroom learning, but e-learning, on-the-job opportunities, resources, and mentoring. Take advantage of the resources that puts development into your own hands. Leadership also means supporting the development of others. I encourage you to consider being a formal mentor. The Voices of the Staff Fostering Learning, Coaching, and Mentoring Group has a table here today soliciting mentors for the micro-mentoring effort. And also look to become mentors and get mentored if you're not already doing so. And also take advantage of the other resources that the university provides. LinkedIn Learning, that's provided to all benefited staff and faculty, where thousands of online courses are available to you and many are added each day. Lastly, make sure you make meaningful connections today. Introduce yourself to someone you don't know. Build your network. And lastly, be bold, be courageous, and be fierce. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Rich Holcomb, Associate Vice President for Human Resources. I was really good when I first walked in, and then I saw my former boss, Larita Thomas, walk into the room, and I got nervous all of a sudden. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. I would like to thank Janice Rubin for her outstanding leadership. She's an amazing person, and clearly without her leadership and supporting this event for many years and her thoughtful considerations, it wouldn't be possible. I'd like to also thank the CW Plus and the Women of Color Task Force. 38 years is simply an amazing accomplishment to think about the lives and the people that have been impacted by this conference, by your learning, by your listening, by you advocating. When we think about today's theme, leadership, citizenship, and advocacy, How do we really work to create a positive work environment here at our university community? What can we do? You can do that by using your voice. You can use that voice to advocate for yourself, for others. You can use that voice to advocate for your own career development and leadership. And I might note that we offer a number of programs through organizational learning that many of them are free, as well as, of course, through CEW+. You can advocate for others by being a mentor or an ally. You can help give a voice to those people who need assistance, and you can sharpen your bystander intervention skills through programs like Change It Up. And you can advocate to our university community by engaging in our DEI-related work, sexual harassment prevention, aimed to create a safe and respectful culture for all of us. These actions can help to create a workplace that we all seek. Advocacy is so important, and for you to take charge of your career, stand up to others in the workplace who are not treated fairly, or to care about our great university and its place in the world. Your actions can inspire others to follow suit, and you can truly make a difference. I want to thank the CW team for providing encouragement and support and resources to our university. What each of you do every day can make a difference. Within our business and finance organization at the university, we've committed to a positive leadership model. One of the elements of that positive leadership model that we've engaged in is the 1% change. The 1% change is what is something small and incremental that you can do each and every day to contribute to a positive work environment. So I would ask you, what could be your 1% change coming out of today? I want to thank you again for all being here today, and I hope you have a great conference. Thank you.
Good morning. This classic Michigan day. So I come to a lot of conferences in my role for TIAA, and it struck me as I was thinking about my remarks for today that this is a wonderful opportunity to pause and recognize a hidden figure who passed away just a couple of weeks ago, Katherine Johnson, who was a brilliant and unrecognized talent for many years. She was a NASA computer, a human computer, a mathematician who was instrumental in the early space movement. We just learned about her in probably the last 5 years through the movie Hidden Figures. You think about her in the industry that she grew up in the West Virginia town where she grew up, the educational environment where she grew up, surrounded by men, probably no women of color, and the things that she was able to achieve, not getting the recognition that she deserved until very late in life. So I want to recognize Katherine Johnson. I feel moved to say that. I also want to recognize that while we remark on hidden figures, big figures in Black History Month and Women's History Month, that there are still inequities that we know exist today. We've heard the statistics related to pay gaps, that women make upwards of 20 to 30 cents on the male dollar. For women of color, that number is actually even lower. We've very recently studied the broken rung theory that looks at the first advancement of women into management roles as being one of the tipping points for some of the gaps that exist in our career mobility. The current statistics show that the rate of promotion to management for women is 79% of that for men, and that can have a devastating effect on the course of one's career. So we have that broken rung theory that we're starting to understand. And just fundamentally, looking at the current Fortune 500, the numbers are still staggering for the presence of women, and particularly women of color. I heard recently that white men named John are more likely to be CEOs than I would be as a woman of color. So not just men, but men of a certain name are, in some instances, statistically more likely to be a CEO than I would be. These are things that say to us that what we're talking about today are not things of history. They're things of some of the challenges that many of you may be facing today. And these types of conferences are wonderful forums to get the tools and the resources and the networks that you need to manage your path. So I come to you from TIAA. My name is Corey Pauling. I lead the inclusion and diversity function for our enterprise along with our corporate social responsibility team. Anybody that knows me knows three things. My loves of my life are my daughters, Clark and Carson. I have a passion for running. And if my team was here, they would know what I'm about to say, and that is that I am from Detroit. I am a Cass Tech alum. One of my classmates is right here in front of me. Went to Cass Tech, went to the University of Michigan, graduated in the class of 1993 from the College of Engineering. But who I am actually started on the east side of Detroit, Mack and Helen Street, as a first-generation college graduate whose grandmother told her that she was smart every day. And that's all it was. That investment in my confidence and the belief that I can achieve. And so I want to pause and again recognize those sorts of impacts. So in terms of TIAA, I am very proud to do the work that I do. I love this work. Inclusion and diversity is not just a fad for us. It is not just a poster on the wall. It's not a set of trophies and T-shirts that we may have, and we do get a lot of that recognition. It really is fundamental to who we are as an organization. It's part of the legacy on which we've been built. We were one of the first organizations to diversify our board of directors with the naming of the first woman on a board of directors in the 1940s. I said 1940s. And the naming of the first African American on our board of directors in the 1950s. I said 1950s. Cliff Wharton was the first Fortune 500 CEO, our past CEO, and currently Roger Ferguson is our CEO and walking Black history himself, along with a very diversified board and executive committee. We're very proud of our legacy, and it really is fundamental to who we are as an organization. We get a lot of recognition in our space from various outlets, Diversity Inc., Working Mother, the Human Rights Campaign. We don't go and solicit that for the purpose, again, of the badge or the poster on the wall. We do it because we want to be able to benchmark what we are trying to do against what we understand to be best practices in the industry and in corporate America, period, and even indeed globally. And so we're proud of our track record, but my goal, my job, is to continue to push that envelope. And so how do we do that? How do we differentiate? On my team, and I think it's by virtue of that engineering degree from the University of Michigan, I'm all about numbers, all about analytics. We study inclusion and diversity. We study the mobility of women in our organization, and we learn a lot from that. We use that to influence and to help set priorities and to raise alarm if we have to do that. So we really invest in trying to understand what the numbers tell us, because we think that's a powerful way to influence. So we are appreciative for the opportunity to support this conference. We are appreciative for the opportunity to speak as I am doing right now. And why is that? It's because we know, TIA knows, I know personally the value of investing in a promising girl of color, that she is smart. We know, TIA knows, I know the value of investing in a promising woman of color and telling her that she belongs, that she can be the next Katherine Johnson. So thank you for the impact that you're making, and for the allies out there, thank you for your time and your sponsorship, because it is so important that this room is not filled only with women or only with women of color. We need the presence of men to be influencers, to be parts of conversations where we are not going to be, to speak up on behalf of the rights of all. So thank you for your leadership in being here, and please have more of your colleagues come forward. I will hand off to Janice Williamson now, again with my sincere thanks for the opportunity to give these remarks.
Thank you, Corey. I'm Janice Williamson from the University Health Service, and I will introduce Dr. DeGrew. Dr. Joy Angela DeGrew is a nationally and internationally renowned researcher and educator. For over 2 decades, she served as an assistant professor at Portland State University School of Social Work and now serves as president and chief executive officer of Joy DeGrew Publications, Inc. Dr. DeGrew's research focuses on the intersection of racism, trauma, violence, and American chattel slavery. She has over 30 years of practical experience as a professional in the field of social work. She conducts workshops, trainings in the areas of intergenerational historical trauma, mental health, social justice, improvement strategies, and evidence-based model development. Dr. DeGrew has published numerous journal articles and book chapters and authored her seminal book entitled Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, Americans' Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing. She has also developed an assessment scale for measuring respect with regard to American African male youth. Dr. DeGrew holds a Bachelor of Science degree in communication, a master's degree in social work, a master's degree in clinical psychology, and a PhD in social work research. I now hand the podium over to Mary Jo Gray.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary Jo Gray. I'm the Compliance Manager for the School of Dentistry. I am now going to introduce you to Dr. Julian Malveaux. Dr. Malveaux has long been recognized for her progressive and insightful observations. She is a labor economist, noted author, and colorful commentator. Her contributions to the public dialogue on issues such as race, culture, gender, and their economic impacts are shaping public opinion in the 21st century America. Dr. Malveaux's popular writing has appeared in USA Today, Black Issues in Higher Education, Ms. Magazine, Essence Magazine, and The Progressive. Her weekly columns appeared from 1990 to 2003 in newspapers across the country, including the Los Angeles Times, Charlotte Observer, New Orleans Tribune, Detroit Free Press, and San Francisco Examiner. She has hosted television and radio programs and appeared widely as a commentator on major networks, including CNN, BET, PBS, NBC, ABC, Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, C-SPAN, and others. Dr. Malveaux has been a contributor to academic life since receiving her PhD in economics from MIT in 1980. She has been on the faculty or visiting faculty of the New School for Social Research, San Francisco State University, the University of California, Berkeley, College of Notre Dame, San Mateo, California, Michigan State University, and Howard University. She holds honorary degrees from Sojourner Douglas College in Baltimore, Maryland, Marygrove College in Detroit, University of the District of Columbia, and Benedict College in Columbia, South Carolina. She received her bachelor's and master's degrees in economics at Boston College. Currently, Dr. Malveaux is the honorary co-chair of the Social Action Commission of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and serves on the boards of the Economic Policy Institute as well as the Recreation Wish List Committee of Washington, D.C. A native San Franciscan, she is the president and owner of Economic Education, a 501c3 nonprofit headquartered in Washington, D.C. I will now hand the podium over to Maria Flores.
Good morning. My name is Maria Flores. I'm an administrative specialist in the Department of Learning and Sciences at Michigan Medicine and a new executive team member with the Women of Color Task Force. I'm here to introduce you to the moderator today. Dr. Patricia Coleman Burns is a University of Michigan Assistant Professor Emerita of Nursing and adjunct affiliated professor in the Department of Afro-American and African Studies, DAWS. Dr. Coleman Burns is also a steering committee member of the Women of Color in the Academy Project, which is housed at CEW+. She currently teaches over 160 students in the undergraduate program's Nursing Freshman Seminar. Her scholarship focuses on intersecting identities, social justice, health disparities, social determinants of health, and efficacious research and community impact that asks questions on what are the best interests of those who are underrepresented and underserved in our society. She is the recipient of the 2017 Harold R. Johnson Diversity Service Lifetime Achievement Award, awarded by the University of Michigan's Office of the Provost. In 2019, she was awarded the Leadership Impact Award of Remarkable Influencer by the Students of Color of Rackham Graduate Student Network. Dr. Coleman Burns conducts workshops and facilitates discussions on the intersection of race and gender, Black girl woman power, wokeness, and building the beloved community. She has also facilitated students, faculty, and staff sessions on hidden and unconscious biases, microaggressions, and bystander intervention. She has facilitated several outstanding DEI events for the health system, including a discussion on Child and Gambino's This is America with a panel of trauma-informed health experts. The University of Michigan MLK Health Sciences lecture entitled Using Genomic and Environmental Methods to Unravel Hypertension Health Disparities in African American Women, and a disparities dialogue on Black women's maternal health and care. She has focused her career on retention and successful learning behaviors of underrepresented nursing students, health disparities, and social justice in patient-centered care and providers' behaviors. A scholar, a researcher, an activist, a civic leader in Southeast Michigan, the task force is pleased to have Dr. Patricia Coleman Burns as our moderator today. So I now, please help me in welcoming our keynote panel.
I see you all are in the house. You've been active. Ann Arbor, Ipsy. Where's Detroit? Come on, Detroit. So there'll be a couple polls that will show up. We'll look back every once in a while and see. There is no shame, and it's anonymous, so you could, but that means you have to be respectful and honest. Good morning. Oh, better than that. Come on now. You all didn't get up early this morning just to come in and be laid back. Good morning. Good morning. It is so good to see you. We are so excited. We're happy to be here, and we're going to just get started. And in their opening remarks and opening response, you'll get a sense of who they are. You'll hear their hearts. You'll hear their voices. You'll hear the way they think. And you will be able to grow in the midst of this effort. So our theme is women's leadership. You leading. Do you know how to do this? What are the challenges? We know that with DEI and affirmative action, that's no longer in existence, so to speak. And when Black women and women of color are hired, even though HR might train the recruiters in the most advanced and progressive inclusive hiring techniques. As a new hire, when you go to the workplace, when you're in that space, the supervisors and sometimes the higher-ups have not been similarly trained, and you find yourself in a toxic environment. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Raise your hand if you know what I'm talking about. So when there are tensions in the workplace with present workers who most often have not been trained in DEI, women of color often report that they are blamed for the disruption that then unfolds. They are all too often negatively evaluated and let go for not being a good fit. Or they simply leave, now listen, without reporting in exit interviews, having failed to report most often out of fear of retaliation and receiving a would not rehire mark. So we're going to begin there. Have you all ever experienced any of this?
Everybody has.
Yeah, everyone.
So whether you're looking at a junior person or even, frankly, a CEO, where people believe they have their little set of assumptions, and they believe because you're a woman of color, either you're rhymes with witch, or you, or you're sapphire, you have no feelings, you can say anything to you. I could just go on and on. The fact is that the workplace is simply a reflection of our society. So anything that you would experience in the workplace, you would experience at the grocery store or someplace else at a bank. And we know what the biases are from an economic perspective against black women and other women of color in banking, where we get higher interest rates, less likely to get loans. I mean, we still can document all of that stuff. And so when it happens in the workplace, it's not any different than happening someplace else, except the reason why we have to speak up about that stuff is because it does affect the bottom line. Turnover, when people leave a job and they don't tell people why they left, but also, let's say we've been training you for 6 months in this job. You've gotten very good at it. You have interesting boss, but you've gotten very good at your job. The company has invested how many person hours in getting you trained? Now you've had enough, you book, what happens? They now have to reinvest in someone else. So it's an economic proposition, which is why workplaces need to be basically more flexible and also more fair. But we know that there is no fairness, and we know that, quite frankly, we talk about women of color, we have to be very careful. We like to see ourselves across racial ethnic lines as sisters, but sometimes the sisterhood ain't all that. Excuse my ebonics. And we just have to be frank about it, because oftentimes women of color and other women are pitted against each other. There's a book a colleague wrote, Elsa Barkley Brown wrote a book about black and white women in corporate America. And she talked about how often people were allies, but how often they were adversaries. And when we look at the numbers in CEOs and other things, what we see is that we're woefully underrepresented. So it's real. Personally, I mean, I've experienced some of everything, so we don't have to talk about it.
Well, my experience is being in the academy, working in university. And one of the things that would consistently be very clear is the kind of black woman that they would want to have representing them, or representing the program. And it's really, it's always, I was taken aback because I don't know that they understood I was really black. I said, I'm going to show up black every day. And there was this sense of a kind of black person, how you should look and move through the world. And I think the other piece to that is there is this, my parents who grew up in the South, who struggled a great deal, to have my sister, my white sister, basically read the help and recommend the help to me when, there were people in my family that were the help, as if now we are fully aligned. And my father used to say, if a white man has a cold, a black man has pneumonia. So in terms of our experiences and how we experience the work environment in others, these are the kind of things that degrade your health, your mental health, your emotional, spiritual health, is when you walk in a door and you are asked to not be your authentic self, something that, you know, I would never accept. And I think it's really important to understand that you have to align yourself with folks that are supportive and are higher ups.
You know, you said you were authentically black. I was at a workplace where I was told I was too black.
Yeah.
I had another workplace where a white man asked me if my hair grew. I was a candidate for an on-air job, and he seemed to think that I looked too black. It advised me to stop wearing kitchen cloth, which I wear most of the time, because I was too black. But, you know, the thing about all this stuff, when we look at it, is that we're looking at, again, society reflected. And when we don't look at black women, other women of color, closely, we miss a lot of what's going on. As an example, the Meritor case was the first case, 1986, that documented that sexual harassment was against the law. Both parties in this lawsuit were African American. The African American man, bank manager, harassing an African American woman, clerk. And he did it for a long time, and he got away with it because he was intimidating. See, sexual intimidation has no color. But in any case, she took it all the way to the Supreme Court and won. And that put sexual harassment under Title VII. But I will bet somebody cash money that you can sit in a women's studies class and never know that that was a black woman who brought that, because we are invisible to so many people.
Sure.
So in this regard, as we look across, give yourselves a big hand for being here, for engaging in learning more techniques and listening to where we are and where we're going in the future. So what kind of suggestions would you have for this audience, for these folk who came out on this day to address these kinds of issues? What ideas?
One of the things that I think is really important and I think worked out for me through the 25 years I was working in the university was the fact that I had built strong relationships in the community. I built strong relationships among board members, Congress folks, senators, and was very active in my community. And it actually served as a protection for me. And part of it had to do with the fact that, again, there were professors who were very clearly racist. They didn't try to hide it. They didn't have any issues. They were tenured, full professors, and unless they ate small children, they weren't going to lose their job. These were individuals who were very callous, and one of the things they would do is they would go after students. They would literally go after the students of color. And what I realized was, you know, one student who was a straight A student, African student, straight A's all the way up to her last year in the last quarter of a graduate MSW program. And one professor flunked her, which means she would have had to repeat the whole year. In addition to that, she had a visa, which it threatened everything. And then the particular professor went on sabbatical. And so the student came into my office and cried. She covered her face because of what it would mean to her family and all of these things. So I spoke with her advisor, a white woman who said, oh, I'm not going to bother such and such because she's full and she's tenured and she has power. I said, so let me try to understand this. You are not going to advocate for your student because you're afraid. So of course, we have the faculty, directory. I called her at home. And I said to her, left a message, because we all have everybody's phone number. I called her at home. I said, just to be clear, that if you don't correct this, first of all, you're suggesting that all the rest of us as professors were wrong in giving her straight A's. All of us were wrong because clearly she was an F student from your vantage point. I said, so unless we correct this, we're going to have a press conference on your front lawn. 15 minutes later, I got the call. There must have been some mistake. I don't know. There was, no, she had a B. Maybe it didn't get in. But what I'm finding here is, again, unless you have the substantial, because I wasn't just, blindly kind of threatening, because it's a one phone call and there would be a press conference on our front lawn. And I think because of that, was the only thing that she knew that was the reality. But how about those folks who don't?
Precisely.
Yes. And so this is where, again, you start looking at power and the power structure and how you must align yourself in order to protect not only yourself, but
Others.
The most vulnerable, the students.
Joy's story really raises a lot of points, rather, for those of y'all who are listening, because she's really talking about allies, activists, excuse me, I have motor mouth, allies, compatriots, and others. The one thing I would say to folks, racial bias, gender bias, some of these things are very ephemeral. You can't put your finger on them. You just know that at the end of X time, you, women of color, never got a good assignment. Men did. I mean, my own alma mater, MIT, is very interesting. They did a study on the sciences, on women professors in the science departments, MIT. We're supposed to be objective, driven by the numbers. Women were getting fewer committee assignments, regardless of rank, had their conference participation underfunded. In other words, the school would pay for your conferences. Women got less paid for conferences. You go down the list. Now, if you ask any one of those women, they would say, well, because people give you excuses. Well, you're junior faculty, that's why you can't go. Well, you seem so busy. We didn't want to put you on this committee. So you really have to document. I mean, you don't have to be paranoid, but just when you notice these instances, just jot them down. Don't put them on your computer, and don't put them where someone else can have them. If you have a computer that other people have access to, keep your business to yourself. Seriously. But you must document. The other thing that I find interesting and useful is to have affinity groups where there's time to talk about what people are going through. So, women of color affinity group, Asian women affinity group, whatever. And the third is understand that your discrimination might not be like mine. I mean, my sister was in a senior position at a bank at one point. She ended up quitting. My sister is crazy. She actually taped a tape recorder to her thigh and then went into the meeting and turned the tape recorder on, and the man said all kind of crazy stuff.
I'm not mad at her.
And it was hilarious. She doesn't even like to wear skirts. She wore a skirt that day so she could tape the tape recorder to herself. But in this particular case, this man, I can remember his name, but I won't say it. There was a cute little white girl who was just as brilliant as Marianne. They were colleagues. He told my sister that he envisioned that girl mending his trousers. And that my sister would have been better off if she had simply stuck to housework. Now, she got all this on tape. So he didn't think the black woman was going to be mending his trousers, necessarily. As I said, if I would mend them, the needle would have hit him. But in any case, so we have to respect what each of us is going through, but understand that it really isn't necessarily the same. Because when we, as women of color, are interested in what the others are experiencing, that gives you a lot more insight. I mean, I'll just leave it there.
So we've given the faculty example. How many of you in this room are faculty? Okay. So I see Katrina Wade Golden. I see Larita Thomas, a prior provost, vice president of human resources. And I mention them because when we started the diversity, equity, and inclusion effort here at the university, the emphasis was we'll just help students understand how they have to receive diversity. We said, no. And then it was, well, the faculty, they're going to do their own thing. And we said, And I remember, Larita, you remember, and Katrina, we said, until we bring staff along in this effort, nothing is going to happen. How many of you in this room are staff? All right. Give yourselves a big... And now all the supervisors will close our eyes. How many of your units paid for this event for you? Give yourselves. That's the work that was done. Thank you, all of those who paved the way that these folk could have come to this conference, which is not pennies, and be here for this day. So we thank you. So my point of saying that is, what specific examples do you have for staff in dealing with the same kind of issues?
Well, you know, one of the things that I did when I was president of Bennett College, and you'd be surprised that at an HBCU college, you still have to look at issues of diversity. Because everybody is not African American. Many African Americans are immigrants, some are not. You have GBLTQ issues that you have to deal with within that broad rubric of African American. But in addition to that, historically black colleges and universities also have people who are not African American on staff. But one of the first things I did after sort of doing my listening tour, going around having lunch with people, was shut my campus down for a day and had a diversity training for everybody. Faculty, staff, and students. And one of the things that we found that we couldn't afford, HBCUs are notoriously underfunded, but there's a need, and perhaps there could be one here, of having an ombudsman, someone who is able to interfere, that you can bring your complaints to. And it might not be a complaint or concern about yours. You might say, I noticed that John Jones is really struggling in his social work class because whenever he comes out of the room, he looks like someone has kicked him in the teeth. I don't know what goes on in that room, but you may want to figure it out. The campus environment, everybody has a stake in campus environment. You can't just say faculty, you can't just say students. In fact, the most risky thing you can do is simply train students. Absolutely. Because students leave prayerfully every 4 years. Exactly. I said prayerfully. So you have reinventing. What you really need to have is that everyone is involved.
And not only should they be involved, but recognizing that these connections and the relationships that you build within the professional arena become basically your support system. Yes. I'm advocating for something called the Institutional Green Book. Now, the Green Book, for motorists, Mr. Green created it during segregation to let folks know where it was safe to eat, to sleep. Well, what happens to people of color that come in certain environments, universities, corporations, we're looking at an issue of retention, we're looking at an issue of recruitment, and why folks don't stay. And what we do unofficially, people of color, women of color, and African-American women, is we make that phone call, who do we know in that institution? My daughter's getting ready to go to work for these folks. Who in that space is safe? Now that the people are not a part of, that are recognized, are not a part of the institution. They actually are created by the individuals who have worked there, exiting, those who have been there a while. They'll go, well, you can always talk to Shirley in accounting. She's good people. It's a space for you that's safe. And again, you can't, kind of vote your way in. You can't get into this book. So it creates a peer pressure that says, well, why am I not in the book? And so while nobody is basically judging anyone, at the same time, you have these faculty or you have these professionals who are deemed safe, equitable, fair, just. So it actually creates a peer pressure within structures that says, why am I not recognized as a safe space? And at the same time, these folks don't have to go in, be the only one, and fear that they aren't going to fit. There are people that'll say, come on over here, whether they need tutoring, whether you need to blow off some steam, come on over here, whatever it is. And then those folks who are rarely recognized get recognized. Second part of it is when we start looking at those allies, right? There's a video of me that went viral. It's called A Trip to the Grocery Store, about my sister-in-law who's half black, half white, but looks white. Peggy McIntosh taught me something, and you all should know who Peggy McIntosh is. She says, if you have white privilege, spend it well. And that means that you recognize what that power is and you lean in without always having to be the person of color, having to raise the issues. That's what it means to be an ally, is to use that wisely.
I remember that video of you. That was a really good one. How many of you in this audience know of someone who ought to be in that green book? Raise your hand. Okay, you need to know more. How many of you who are in units, every single unit on this campus has a DEI strategic plan? Raise your hand if you know who your DEI liaison is. Look at Katrina, look at this. Oh my goodness.
Absolutely.
Do you use them? Use them. If we're going to make this thing work, diversity, equity, inclusion, you can no longer step away from a job without reporting what happened to you. And you do that, as has been said here, not blindly, because you do have to protect yourself. So you do it through your DEI liaison, you do it through the people that are in the Green Book, so that you are able to report all of these incidents and cases and stop feeling like it's just happening to you. We're all in this.
You know what's really important? You may have an issue with a person, and you may think it's race or gender, but you don't want to complain. A lot of people don't want to be perceived as whiners. They don't want, why are you complaining? But if you make a complaint, you raise an issue, it's not necessarily a complaint, raise an issue, understand that even if nobody does anything about that issue, if 4 more people say the same thing, that's what is going to happen. If one person, who's ever in charge might say, well, maybe she had a bad day. People find all kinds of excuses for racists. Maybe they had a bad day. Maybe they had breakfast that day. Maybe the car had a flat tire. So that's why they snapped at you. But if there are enough people who say, well, no, she naps all the time. It's like a friend of mine told my mama I was grumpy. And he said, but I know women get grumpy when they go through the menopause. And my mama said to the man, then she been on the menopause since she was 11. Because I've always been grumpy. So, and there's evidence thereof. But in any case, I just want to encourage people to document, keep it together, and also understand there's nothing to be ashamed about.
Absolutely.
That you feel that you've been treated differently. A lot of folks, I'm not going to complain. And they sort of leave, tuck their tail, between their legs and say, I'm out of here. Well, you have basically then done a disservice to everybody who comes behind you.
And I think that in terms of documentation, what I've noticed, my area of expertise is in mental health and addressing trauma. So one of the things that I've noticed, for example, a woman comes in to work and she says, Joy, guess what happened to me at Nordstrom? I was standing there and it was as though I was invisible. The woman comes and basically sees the white person behind me. And then the woman says to me, well, yeah, but people, you're going to always find those kind of people. And I'm going, okay, so I'm listening to her. And you would think at that point, we're done. But I want to talk about how the stuff starts churning, because I know everyone out there has had an experience where you said, I should have said something. God, I wish I would have just, And what happens is I hear this woman telling that story a couple of more times to someone else. So it wasn't just something that rolled off of her. So then I reach out to her and I say, it sounds to me like that's something, because I don't want you to take that home and be angry and frustrated with your family because you didn't deal with that, or for it to churn inside of you and create stress. So I said, it sounds to me like you want to do something. Well, what can I do? I said, you want to go back to the store? I'll go with you. Well, what if the director isn't there? I said, well, then we will write a letter.
Yes.
Because you see, there's always something you can do. And unless you recognize that you do have something that you can do, whether you write it, because that's documentation, you're going to get a letter back, write the corporate office, write their higher up. And I help people do that so it doesn't metastasize inside of us. Because, there is another toll, and that is the physical toll that it takes on you when you're constantly feeling like you aren't being heard or seen.
And that's why the life expectancies of African American men, for example, are much lower than the life expectancies of white men, and African American women, life expectancies much lower than those of white women. It doesn't show up in terms of, and these are people, according to some econometric studies, that are similarly situated. In other words, they weigh the same. You guys say, oh, well, it was because they were overweight. Well, they weigh the same, about the same age. We're looking at basically the extent to which racism and sexism basically affect the quality of life and the way it grinds so exceedingly small that unless you're very aware, you don't know why you're mad. You don't know what's happened, but you know when you go to work in the morning, I am so ticked off. You know, before anything even happens, you ticked off. But the light, you know, all these things show up in numbers, and that it's important just to note that they show up in numbers in terms of how we measure quality of life.
So I'm looking at. So let's talk about the power, the influence in this room. General perspective is that women of color, and specifically black women, comprise a significant block of votes.
Oh, yeah.
It is believed that the presidential candidates, now we have two, must address the needs and agendas of black women and women of color. So we're shifting now to look at you and how you can harness the power and the authority of who you are as represented in this room. So my question to our speakers are, do you agree with this sentiment?
The importance of black and women of color voters? Absolutely. When you start looking at actual demographics, for example, African American women have a much larger turnout than almost anyone else. And I think that there's this kind of notion that black women have not kind of been part of things. Black women have always been part of every movement, starting prior to slavery. Yaa Santo Nzinga, the queen who launched and literally led revolts against British colonization. You have moving all the way through Shirley Chisholm, everybody that we have right now, these folks upon whose shoulders we stand, become very critical because our needs, our families, our communities need our voice, and we have that voice. And so it's really critical that we come together and recognize our intrinsic power as a group. And because unless we step forward, our issues aren't going to be addressed. We have always had to be assertive about those things.
You know, this is really fascinating. I'm looking at some of your responses, but couple things. Black women have been the balance of power in the Democratic Party, but we don't get the recognition for it. There are so many stories I could tell, but they have names in them, so I won't. But oftentimes the Democratic Party has basically just turned their back, and majority of women as well. Emily's List declined to endorse Carol Moseley Brown until after the fact. Emily's List means early money is like yeast, because you put yeast in whatever. I don't cook, but I suppose it makes the bread grow. Makes the bread grow. That was really sophisticated, But in any case, so black women who step out, and we're more likely to step out. But our stepping out is often resented, often we're smacked out, how dare you? But in this presidential year, there are a couple things that I'm sure it has been noted already. I wasn't paying attention. We were in the back gossiping. That this is the 100th anniversary of women getting the right to vote. This is also the 150th anniversary of the passage of the 15th Amendment, which is the amendment, no, 15th or 16th, 15th Amendment, last one, that gave African American people the right to vote. Now, of course, as soon as we got that, the devil got busy, and we saw all kinds of laws put on Southern legislatures to prevent you from voting. Or I have a great true story. My great-grandmother lived in Mississippi. When I got put out of high school, they sent me down there to live with her. And it was very segregated Mississippi, so I had a really good time. But in any case, when she told me this story, and then we verified it. She had a master's degree, blah, blah. She went to vote, and they made her guess how many pennies were in a jar.
That's right.
And if she couldn't get it right, she couldn't vote. So she kept going there every time, because the counties where you voted could make up any kind. My grandmother, her sister, said that she had to read a passage in Latin and then say what it meant. Now, the white folks who gave her that, they couldn't read Latin, you know? But in any case, the right to vote is one of the most precious things we can have. And I believe that both political parties are horribly flawed. If I had my way, we would have a multi-party system. We would be able to catch some of the nuances. I mean, as they do in Germany, as they do, you know, in Italy, as they 10 or 15 political party systems, which also forces people to talk across party lines. So here what you have people doing, they're in their lanes, and they're really stupid lanes. Because when you look at impeachment, I have so many off-the-record conversations with people who I thought were decent Republicans. And they would say, oh, he's wrong, he can't do that. Then they turn around and go and say the man should be acquitted. Because guess what? Republicans they want the courts. And if you're a Republican there, I'm not dissing you, I'm just telling you the truth. 45 has appointed so many judges that it will be 39-year-olds who've never tried a case, but they're now a judge. 39. And so they're going to be there unless, you know, God is good and, never mind, I'm not going to go there. But basically, they'll be there for another 40 years. And so that's why they will put up with these shenanigans that have made our country look horrible to the rest of the world. I mean, horrible. So there are three things. One, first of all, is you must be a citizen. And to be a citizen, you must vote. You have all these people give you all these excuses. Well, the Republicans, the Democrats, they're the same thing. No, they're not. Neither are perfect, but they're not the same thing. Hillary Clinton would never have appointed Gorsuch or Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Now, we would have to fight with her about some other stuff, but we know that she would have cut food stamps, which this man has done. This man is doing so much harm to our environment that our children's children will not be able to go fishing because so many of our rivers have been polluted. And, you know, and my line is, if you elect a clown, expect a circus. So, and let the sideshow begin. But the point is that we're all looking at the circus, and the sideshow is all of our rights being chipped away. So, number one, you must vote. Number two, one of the things that we know as we study voting is that the highest voter turnout is during presidential election years. Well, we like the voter turnout at presidential election years, but those are not the only issues that you have to deal with. Who is on your county or city school board? You know, many of the women, Harriet Woods is an example, she was a lieutenant governor in Missouri, but she got involved in politics as a mother when there was not a street sign where her children were crossing the street. That's how she learned politics. She wanted to know how to get the street sign, and then she moved it on. You have local issues that you must deal with. If you don't, other people are going to decide them for you. And so zoning issues, and we can talk about racial implications in zoning. There are some places where basically there's no bus because they zone the buses out of that area. Now, what does that mean economically? It means that somebody has to pay more money to get where they want to go. So local issues are as important as the federal issues, and sometimes more so. State elections are also important because all this gerrymandering that we saw, a result of state legislatures. And so when you look at 2020, be very careful to look at who your state candidates are.
That's right.
And pay lots of attention to them. Even at a more micro level, be involved in your city or county party. The Democratic and Republican parties will not change unless we make them change. And I mean, they're partisan apparatus that basically move with the majority. So now to the rules are so rigged that Michael Bloomberg, in the course of a month, spent $400 million and change. And I say it's change because if you have 60 billion, 400 million is change. But he spent all that to get one ballot and get no votes. I say he paid about $1 million, or maybe about $20 million per delegate. He didn't end up with about 4 delegates, 5 delegates. The role of money in politics is clear, but we need to try to move that in some way. Some jurisdictions have. Some jurisdictions say you can't spend money. We can spend money here, but you can't get matching. So matching funds are a lot of ways to deal with it. But the influence of money is horrible. That's why Kamala Harris was, not everybody did love her, but a lot of us did. She's my homegirl, San Francisco. She just couldn't raise the money. And people say, well, money is a function of support. But if you don't have billionaires or millionaires supporting you, if all the thousands of people who have a median income, the median income in the United States is about $60,000 for a family of 4 white people, about $40,000 family of 4 for black people. So if these $60,000 a year people, $40,000 a year people love you, and they're also budget crunched, they can't give you what they can give you. So basically the whole money game, Thomas Sire has left out. I don't think he spent as much as Bloomberg, but he spent a lot. I mean,
I think the other piece to it also is when you talk about the Senate races, you know, who the Supreme Court's going to be, recognizing that while we are being distracted by a lot of things, we're looking at important laws being repealed. But there's something that just came out that I think that folks need to pay attention to. The FBI basically just raised white supremacy or racialized oppression and terrorism to the level of ISIS in this country, specifically for 2020. Now, what's important is, you know, just given the fact that who's over the FBI at this point, that wasn't something they wanted to say out loud, but they had to say it. So the question then becomes, for people of color in particular, is what did they know? What is the noise? What is the chatter that would suggest you need to raise it to the level of ISIS? We don't have that information, and yet many of us are the targets. And these are the kind of things that come and go. You know, when the United Nations started to look in 2016 at the condition of African Americans in this country and calling for reform and calling for reparations, it came and went, hidden in plain sight. So we have to pay attention. One of the things that I think is really important is to pay attention to what's going on around you. You know, if they tell you, for example, today there's a 30% chance of snow, and you look out the window and it's snowing, that means it's 100% chance right there. You know, there are certain common sense things, and when we start looking at politics, when we start looking, again, I don't assign myself or align myself with any party because there's deficits in all of them, but I do know how to vote my conscience and vote for issues and individuals that represent and reflect dignity, that reflect integrity. And so these are things that I think are common sense. You don't need a lot, but we do need to encourage people who don't believe they have power. Not just, a perfect example of this is there was a study, Yale Child Study Center came up with a study of teachers, pre-K teachers, 135 of them, and discovered that there was extraordinary bias to see and to reprimand black children, and particularly black boys. We're talking about the little bitty ones, right? They looked at the trajectory of their gaze when they said, look for a problem, if there are any problems in this classroom. Well, there weren't any. But they looked at where their eyes would search. Who did they look for? And they looked for black boys. So here, let's roll that back. We have, you know, considerable information and data that suggests that this bias is there. But what often happens to people, particularly women of color, African American mothers, is they send their children into the school and hope they're not going to get hurt. Hope. I don't hope. I go in and I say, hello, Mrs. Lewis, I understand you're going to be teaching my grandson. I need to know what you're going to do to mitigate any potential harm as a result of bias. And then Ms. Lewis will say to me, well, I don't understand. Well, here's the data. Now that you have the data, and I'm coming to a point here, I'm going to need you to address how we're going to keep the most vulnerable in this situation safe. Well, I'm not a racist. Well, here's some more data, and that suggests that you might not know. So I'm not going to just complain. I'm going to give you the information, but I'm going to also hold you accountable. And that's something that we fail to do, and that's part of what my sister here is saying. In order to hold people accountable, we have to be aware. And we have to lean into it. And if you don't feel strong, bring a few folk with you.
You know what? My line about elections is this: voting is not the most you can do; it's literally the least you can do.
Absolutely.
I mean, you must vote, but you must stay involved if you care about what your community looks like. I mean, you wake up one day and suddenly your street is a one-way street because somebody went to the Department of Transportation and said it would be much easier on me and my friends if we just had a one-way street. Now you live on the one-way street, all of a sudden you can't get around the way you need to get around. So it's the least you can do. When you have elected representatives, especially at the local level, I mean, here in Michigan, you could do this. Have your state legislature, we want to have a town hall meeting with you. Especially because so many states are cutting higher education. Absolutely. And this shows up in what you owe. So you may want to just do the research. How much does get, Michigan State get, these other places get, and how could you get more? And then they're very typically, right now there's an anti-education bias. Mm-hmm. Well, see, I think that Betsy DeVoid, that's what I call devoid of good sense, is a product of Michigan. She's cut in the education budget. She's attempted to cut, 45 has, about 20% of the budget, and then take the remaining money and use some of it for charter schools, which means taking it away from public schools. Much as you love charter schools, and there's some good ones and some bad ones, the data on charter schools is this. On average, they're as good as a basic public school. What happens with charter schools is you get the outliers. Everybody at the Chicago Boys High School went to college. Well, what about that other school? So you get the outliers and you're not looking at the median. There's no evidence that charter schools are any better than public schools. But you can always show a very good one and a bad one. But those dollars are being taken from the public school system where about 80% of our young people are going to be. So charter schools are cute. They're real cute. And sometimes they're effective, but not always. But the public school system is an educational imperative for us to deal with. But again, in order to be an activist, the City Council of Ann Arbor needs to be coming in here to talk to you all sometimes. Your state legislators as well. And when you go home, some of you are from Michigan, I saw the little map. When you go out, is Detroit in the house actually? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Well, when I looked at the little map, it said Ypsilanti. I don't know where that is.
Next door.
But anyway, you need to engage with your elected officials. And finally, there's a conversation going on right now about generational tension. It talks about whether or not, the old heads, I'm a baby boomer, and the youngins, the millennials, and the sub-millennials, I don't know what they call themselves. But they're talking about, you need to move over and let us come in. No, you need to pull your seat to the table. Shirley Chisholm said, if there has no seat at the table for you, bring your own chair. Many people are looking to see what's happening next, and many are looking to do generational handoffs. But it doesn't help any of us to wear these T-shirts that disparage baby boomers. They was your mamas,
Let me just put a disclaimer right here.
This is non-political.
We are not being partisan. I'm reading what my questions are. It is important to not be shut down, to be silenced in the face of folk who tell you we don't talk about that here in the workplace. We don't talk about politics and religion in the workplace as they talk about politics and religion in the workplace, and they're often the supervisors that are then making decisions about how you get scheduled to work and what you can and cannot do at your workplace. And so I'm putting a disclaimer. We are not being partisan. The issue is how to identify and know how to act in your own best interest.
Yes.
That is a human right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So having said that, can you say a little bit more about how we should vote in our own best interest? What are the best interests of Black women and women of color here in the university and in the United States And should we vote for the person at the top of the ballot? What is going on up here? Come quickly. You all are so good. Give yourselves a come on now. You all are awesome.
Okay, I love it. Someone is feeling the burn.
Okay.
I'm feeling the top of the Democratic ticket. I just want the orange orangutan out of there. Actually, but you know, again, I should call him
So
that.
repeat that again. What did you just say? Not about the orange.
I said, I'm feeling the top of the Democratic ticket. I think that our country has, I don't think even, as I said, I have Republican friends. I even let them eat at my house sometimes. But, and I have to love you to feed you because I don't cook that well. So, but in any case, I don't think we could survive another 4 years of our 45th president. I just really don't. I mean, the level, he first of all has an obsession for President Barack Obama. I mean, the other day, was it yesterday or the day before, he said that the coronavirus was Barack's fault. You know, I mean, you've been the president for 3 years, dude. You cut the Centers for Disease Control. You cut their budget every year. We don't have enough studies or enough masks to stop the virus because you cut the budget. So if you please don't get the coronavirus, but if you understand the nation of epidemics, and that's what the Centers for Disease Control does, then you understand where you have to, even if you are a staunch Republican, vote Republican at the bottom of the ticket, but at the top, vote for our country. I mean, I really think it's about voting for the survival of our country. And again, our country is not fair, it's not perfect. I didn't start pledging the flag until I became a college president. Because because I had to be a good example. But throughout the rest of but usually I just put my hand here down. But then one of the trustees noticed. She said, Dr. Malvo, I noticed you don't pledge your flag. I said, because it's not the truth. She said, well, just in the interest of whatever, could you try? And then I went home and borrowed. But no, the United States is not perfect, but we're a decent country, but we have someone who's running us into the ground, literally running us into the ground. And labor is going to have fewer rights. Women will have fewer rights. The Supreme Court is looking at the Louisiana law that forbids abortion after 20 weeks. Some people don't know they're pregnant in 20 weeks. So, I mean, so just do the pro-con. And again, I will not tell you the lie that I'm not partisan.
I said the university. I didn't say you.
Okay. Well, I'm just making it clear and making it plain. I cannot move my mouth and form my lips to say that I'm not partisan. But once in my life, I did vote for a Republican. He was pretty good, actually. But he didn't win. But by and large, we have to make conscious decisions about what we're doing. And, conscious decisions about who we're voting for, conscious decisions about what outcomes are going to be. And, if there are issues that you have burn for issues that really, really bother you, not only should you write to someone immediate, but send them to the platform committee of the Democratic National Commission or the platform committee of the Republicans if you so desire. But the platform committees are the ones who have actually come up with a manifesto of what the issues are that are most important. So if you really feel a burning desire, either go online and find out who's on the platform committee, who might be from this area, or simply write something to the platform committee saying, I'm a student or I'm affiliated to University of Michigan. I think this is one of the issues. The equal pay issue has not yet been satisfied. Women still are earning about 80% what men earn, and that's not going away. But the structure of the jobs market has also been changed to the point where we are becoming a gig economy, where people are putting together 3 or 4 part-time jobs to equal one full-time job.
And I think that's the other reason why, when we start looking at disparities, and you start looking at our interests in terms of our communities, not least of which is the economic issues, but even looking at health disparities, safety, issues of access. All of those things become very, very critical. And I am actually nonpartisan. So I really do believe that it's important to look at the things that are impacting us and understanding what are the moves, how should you move to change and eradicate some of these deficiencies that are going on for you in your community? And if you don't understand them, like, I mean, literally when you get the little voters thing, Lord, I have a PhD and I have to call my sister and go, what does this really mean? You know, we need to have some help around that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Talking to people about those things. And again, this is the only way we can hold folks accountable. If we don't show up for it, then we really can't complain.
They say you don't care. They say we don't care. When somebody tells you that they can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and there will be no consequence, that person understood that people would not hold him accountable. That whatever he did was going to be okay because he stood for something. And I'm not going to go there. But in any case, you have to be a part and you have to be involved. My voting history is really, I first voted in 1960. Now, I ain't that old, but my mother took me to the voting poll, held my little self up, and let me pull the lever. And I think I fell in love with politics and voting at that point in time. I said, well, Mom, why am I doing this? And she said, because we want to pick the president. We want Kennedy. Yes, but you may not have such a long history with voting, but develop it and talk. First of all, talk to your elders.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk to your elders because so many young people. There's a whole group now. There's one group who says if they don't get reparations now, they're not going to vote. Oh well. There's another group that says if they don't get Bernie, they're not going to vote. And that's a problem. That's why we have 45, because voter turnout in 16 was about 10% less than voter turnout was in 12. In addition, young people turnout in 16 was lower than young people turnout in 12. So we could have him again if people don't turn out. Frankly, between Bernie and Biden, both of them need to stay home and rest. I mean, I'm furious about why my party could not find some people who are younger, like Kamala. I love Mayor Buttigieg, but I don't think he's ready. But I got to interview him, and I enjoy him. I think he's really smart, and I'm hoping that in 8 years, perhaps, he'll come back. But in any case, I mean, Biden, like I said, well, I'll take the top of the ticket. I just want 45 out of there.
Speak your mind. Speak your mind.
So as you're listening to this, you know, the teacher in me always says, so how do I translate my individual citizenship rights and responsibilities into what I do in the workplace?
That's fascinating.
Say that again.
So if I know how to act in my own interest as my individual vote and as I exercise my citizenship rights, how do I translate that right now, right here, into the workplace? What is it that you are and should be doing from these lessons, from this wisdom that's generating here, that you can use in the workplace? So there's some things, and then we're going to move on to our final area, but I want you to think about what's the down ballot issue in your workplace? What's the legislation and practices and policies that are being unfolded in the workplace that you're being asked to roll out? And how should you respond to those? And what should you be doing?
I want to speak to that. One of the things that show up for me when we look at equity and diversity and inclusion, you know, they become the buzzwords that are politically correct. They used to have something that they used to call diversity training. And diversity training did, well, absolutely nothing. Because people came to the little sessions and they would check off that they were there, that they did the thing, that they sat in the room and they, you know, talked about, you know, let's have a potluck. Yeah, and let's have let's just have people have cultural garb. Well, how about they bring some, you know, let's have some diversity food and let's have some people come in. And what you do then is you basically trivialize contributions of folks as though people didn't build the country. And at the same time, the folks who actually benefited economically were not the actual people that were suffering oppression and toxicity in these environments. So we have to be very careful to keep our equity, diversity, and inclusion accountable. Because diversity, again, it's like the new thing that everyone has to say. For example, I had someone say to me, a corporation I did some work with, well, yes, Joy, we have an equity lens, and, we are looking at intersectionality, and we are, of course, considering, all levels of oppression, and, we also want to be representative, so we're going to hire more people of color to represent. And I'm going, so who's going to hire the people of color? And they said, well, we are. I said, what makes you think you can? They go, what do you mean? I said, let me just tell you what the data says, and the literature suggests that the kind of person of color you're going to choose is the person of color more likely to not reflect their real cultural reality. In other words, the ones that seem a whole lot like you. So they go, don't you just love Richard? Don't you just love Richard? And Richard is someone black. They go, we have your black person, but Richard would not accidentally find himself in a black community. And that's who gets hired. And then the people of color have to figure out how to circumvent the person that looks just like them. So how many black people in the audience have met black people that aren't black?
Everybody
there
brown,
you go. And that's who gets hired.
Everybody brown ain't down.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
The question that was posed about what you do in your own workplace is fascinating. I'm not going to tell you because I think that this is a conversation that folks should have in small group sessions in their unit. But there is one thing that I will say. The University of Michigan has a lobbyist. I think Michigan actually probably has more than one. Most universities have a lobbyist. Their job is to go to Lansing. What is Lansing the state capital? Go to Lansing and lobby to get more money for the university. And that's a good thing. But the question is whether our other concerns can be folded into that particular concern. Can lobbyists, if there is an interest in social justice, can lobbyists from this university deal with Flint, and how the water crisis at Flint? Can we deal with some of the issues around incarceration and criminal? Thank you. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. But economic reform, there's so many things that your lobbyists can do that's going to be a communal thing. But in that interest, and I guess I won't be back here anytime soon, you got to hold your president accountable. The president of the university needs to be accountable as well. And I'm sure that he is. Well, I'm not sure because I don't know him. But I know that many presidents, I used to be one, and I was not as and I'm a revolutionary, but I was not as responsive to students as I might have been when they started doing stuff like protesting assemblies. I'm like, no, y'all, you got the wrong one. I'm a baby panther. Don't try me. But but basically, in your own workplace, there's some places. But the other thing is the lobbyist issue. Is how you can get your lobbyists to help your university and your unit be more responsive to some of these issues. Now, as I was looking at this, I saw many people raising the work issue, which is really important. And the other issue, someone said they were making more money, but still broke. You know why? Healthcare. Healthcare has become more and more expensive. Employers are contributing less and less. Some companies, I don't know about universities, but some companies will not let you qualify for their health plan until you work for 90 days. So what if you break your leg in 30 days? Oh, well, that's on you. So candidates must address this healthcare issue. Bernie says Medicare for all. Mayor Pete said Medicare for all who want it. The problem with Medicare for all is that some union members and others have better plans now than they would get under Medicare for all. So there has to be a middle ground. But I think that many people are feeling more broke because health care is more expensive. Ooh.
We do. We adopt every one of you. Let me say right here in terms of, it's so good to hear from you, because often we sit in these audiences and we have these burning questions and nobody's listening to us. So we thank you so much for participating. The second thing I want to say is the president of the university what I understand, and you all know, some of you know I've been around a long time, he needs to hear from you. He hears from the naysayers. He hears from those who complain about you, us. He needs to hear from you. It's almost like we need to do, how many of you do the prayer line, where it goes, your day is this day. But it's a similar thing that we need to send messages to him of all the things that we see that are affirming of who we are and encouraging him to continue, because he needs to hear from us. The other thing I want to say at this point, I keep talking about Katrina. In 5, we need to make sure that our units are following the DEI plans, and we need to double down on those and make sure that they are doing what they need to be doing, because that is the president's commitment. So I need you to understand and know your power and your authority. Use the tools that we've been given. We've been given this tool to impact and direct the diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda here on this campus. Let the president hear from you. Let your units know that you are woke and know what DEI is about in each of your units. All right? Let's close out with one other issue. So, how many of you are, please forgive me, staying home on the debate day in October? Do you all know about the debate? All right, okay, let me stop being silly then. All right, so the university is rolling out a theme semester on democracy and debate. I want to encourage all staff to look at ways in which you can build on that thing. You've been given permission. You've been given permission by the university to talk about the things that have been fertilized here today. Issues around what's in our best interest. What does this legal thing? You as staff, either within units or because we need to look at women of color in the task force to bring us together, we should be forwarding a theme on democracy and debate. And my question to you, because you're looking at us from how would you encourage us as staff here, primarily staff, to use this opportunity of the final presidential debate that will be held here on the university campus in October? How should staff utilize that and use their influence and authority to make life better for them? Any ideas?
My first thought is that we need to educate people. We need to educate ourselves and sometimes bring folks into the space that can help advance ideas. Again, there's an assumption, one of the issues I think all the time, and I'm sure you have the same experience, Dr. Malveaux, is that when we are in audiences, we are dealing with people 101 level, 600 level. People of color come in with a whole nother level of understanding, having lived in their skin. And then there are other folks who are allies that have been on the front lines of this issue the whole time. And then there's someone who's saying, are you sure there's a problem? They don't have a clue. I'm not mad at them, but we don't have time for that. So we need to be educated, and even if you don't have it yourself, there are other folks that you can pull into your space to educate the folks in your space about what the real issues are, what the real debate should be about. Because again, if you look in this room, we have to understand, my belief is that ultimately it's going to be women that's going to bring peace to the world, that are going to pull together what we need to move forward, not just here in America, but in the world. I think it's going to be women. And so we need to lean into this. We need to own it. And again, when we make mistakes, we have to just say, I'm sorry, and keep it moving. Don't get in your feelings. We have to, again, bring the knowledge base into the space so that we can have informed decisions and informed debates. And does that make sense?
I have a couple. I'm not familiar with how the themed semesters go, but students and staff and faculty, everybody should have some input. And one of the challenges I think that I don't know how to quite do this. I tried it, admitted it didn't work. But to get students, faculty, and staff in small units together. So that, because basically faculty are extraordinarily entitled. I say this as a former faculty member as well, but it's their way or the highway. Yeah. I mean, and they know more. I always tell people that faculty members, when they relate to presidents, they think they were just as smart as a president, they just don't want to do all that work. So because they think they're just as smart as you, they don't pay attention to you until you provide them with consequences. Like one lady didn't get to travel for almost 2 years, fooling with me. No, your travel budget is not approved. No, your travel budget is not approved. Nope. But in any case, there have to be ways that everyone can weigh in on what they want. But students and staff should certainly have a part of it. The other thing I want to say, because there have been a couple places where debates have occurred, and the media came in, and the Morty Hucking Bucks in the city came in, and then there was little space for students or community members. So one of the early understandings that you must have with whoever's in charge of this is we want, let's say 25% or 50%, whatever the number you come up with that's reasonable for students, faculty, and staff. That you can't come to my house and tell me I can't sit down. You all have to have a place there. In terms of the actual theme, with the debates coming here, I think it's a really great time to talk about any of the things we talked about today. But we could talk about debate, we could talk about civility. Believe me, if 45 is here, you're not going to have any. But it may be a great starting point to talk about how we address ourselves as Americans. I mean, we talk about a nation, and what is our notion of the nation? We're so divided now. I mean, it's almost painful. It's not that people are wearing MAGA hats. It's that as they wear MAGA hats, they're also thinking something not so nice about me. And I can tell you stories, but literally there are folks who, and the left has its problems as well. How would you walk up on somebody who's having a meal in a restaurant with their family and decide you're going to shame them then? See, I would wait till they left. And on their way out, I'd say, yo. But while they're sitting there doing a basic human thing, they're eating. Why would you do that? Make a fool out of yourself and everybody else. And the poor little woman who, Sarah Huckabee, they walked up on her at this woman's restaurant. The restaurant had to close for almost 3 months because then the Trumpies started boycotting the restaurant. It's a small little restaurant. It probably seats about 30 people. But it's one of these, DC is very shishi, and the portions are like tiny. I never saw such a smaller chicken, but it's shishi and blah, 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 gourmet, da, da, da. Everything was farm raised, and they grew it in their backyard. So obviously operating for a very small profit margin, and they just had to close for 3 months because of all the vitriol that happened. So civility might be an issue for a semester, just to talk about civility. What does it mean? How do we disagree without being disagreeable? After all, we're talking about this coronavirus in some ways. Well, it's not going to just strike Democrats, and it's not just going to strike Republicans. It's not going to just strike black folks or Asian Americans or white folks. This is a virus that has an implication for all of us. Let me be clear about that. And there's so many other things. After September 11th, implications for all of us. So I think that civility might be something that you may want to think about, but I also think that whatever it is, it's illegitimate if students, faculty, and staff don't have a stake in it. If it's only faculty, it's going to be a mistake.
I think the other piece, and one of the reasons why it's difficult to bring that group of folks together, I always actually work with folks separately because they don't tell the truth when the folks in the room, are somehow connected to their check. And or they feel like there's going to be some kind of backlash. And I think, we have to be real honest about that. Not everybody wants to be in the room with everybody because they don't trust everybody. But I think sometimes what we have to do is figure out who are those folks that are advocates and that are supportive that you can have those conversations with. We can't always say what we know. We can't always do that. But I think that, civility is certainly one of those things. But just literally integrity to me. And when I look at just the fact that there was a statement that people need to exercise integrity in the moment of choice. And what I believe about that is we all know and behave well in arenas, for example, like this, where it's all correct. But it's not just in these arenas, but in the workplace, in those spaces where nobody's watching you. Are you exercising integrity in that moment? And again, those are the things that we have to recognize, and to recognize that this country, what makes America unique in the world. You know, I travel around the world, inevitably people will say to me, you Americans, you all seem to have so many problems with, you know, race. You know, we don't have those problems in our country. And well, not only that, I'd say ain't nobody there but you. You know? We are the divine experiment. We're a divine experiment, and we're struggling. But if we can do it, the rest of the world has a chance. But if we don't, I don't think the rest of the world does. Because we are reflective. When you look in this audience, the majority of the world is a world of color. That's real. That's numbers, real numbers. So, you know, I grew up, and I'm just going to talk about my age now, with 3 channels, ABC, NBC, and CBS, and the television went off at night. And I remember, based on that television, you know, Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, I thought the world was white. Now, based on what we know about numbers, 59% of the planet is Asian. They should have had somebody Asian just rolling through, just in the background somewhere, you know. But now that we recognize and understand the great diversity that we have to appreciate it. I always say to people, it's going to get difficult, but stay in the room. Stay in the room.
Don't go. So we're about to close. So let's breathe. If you have anything you want to put up there, we do have the record. I mean, it's anonymous. We don't have who you are, except the CIA had planned it. Anyway. All right. But remember, we're talking about Women on a Mission 2.0. Leadership, citizenship, and advocacy. So I'm going to ask our guest speakers to close out with their closing remarks, whatever they want to say to us, to you, and we'll move on to the next thing.
I think one of our responsibilities, you know, as one of the baby boomers and all of those folks that I know who taught me, all of my mentors, is to pass the baton. I think something we did not do well is, you know, we all kind of, especially people of color, in terms of buying into an illusion of inclusion. In fact, that, you know, when we start looking at collectively coming together, in reality, when we leave, we know there's a Black community. We know there may be a Latinx community. There may be where we are quite segregated. We continue to be. But I think we need to, those of us that are in the audience, we need to mentor people in that do have vision, that are woke, that are aware. But we can't make the assumption that they're going to be there. Because what I'm finding now is that we have not adequately passed the baton, because I'm not going to hit the tape. And I realize that I have a responsibility to make certain that the person coming up behind me is aware of who paid for them to be here. Because someone paid for everyone in this audience to be here. We're standing on their shoulders, and we have a debt that we have to pay to show up, even when it's hard, when it's miserable. Because no matter what, you know, I had ancestors that were looking at 100 years of enslavement behind them and 200 more in front of them. And still hope showed up. Still faith showed up. And so however hard it may be, we don't have the liberty to decide that it's too hard for us. Too much has been paid for, and we have a responsibility to pass along the knowledge that we have.
Well, I want to begin by quoting my mentor, my sister friend, who was a member of the board at Bennett. It was Dr. Maya Angelou, who said, I heard her give this speech many times, we have already been paid for. In other words, and she really talked about all that Black people in particular have suffered, all that we've endured, and that we kept going because we have already been paid for. We don't have to pay anybody back. As a matter of fact, much of the work I do is on reparations and racial economic justice. And when we look at some of this stuff, you can see that we paid for it.
Absolutely.
So no person should look at them as we're have our hands out. No. Frankly, white America has its hands out waiting for us to give more. The second thing I would say, someone put something up that said that women did not march back in the day. Let me just help you out with some history. The women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated marched in the Women's March in 1919. We were the white women from the Southern Women, Southern Suffrage Association did not want us there, but we bogarted. We just made our way in. Ida B. Wells did march with the Illinois contingent. She was one of the few that was allowed to. But these were young women. They were undergraduate students at Howard University, and they had decided that they were willing to step out. You know, their mamas and daddies did not send them to school in 19-something to be protesting, but they decided that it was that important. Delta, of course, is not the only organization. Many of our organizations basically have organized around the right to vote, and it sometimes just takes one person. But my line that I spoke at a leadership conference last week, and these folks got mad at me, but I tell you, if you think you're leading, you look back, and ain't nobody following you, you're not leading, you're just tripping. So. So basically, leadership, lots of people aspire to leadership, but it requires a certain set of people skills. It requires listening. Some people think leadership means you stand on that podium and you say a lot of stuff. Servant leaders understand who their constituents are. That's right. They're willing to talk to them. They're willing to compromise. They're looking always forward. And they're always looking in the room to say, you didn't say anything. How come? Right. It's not necessarily putting someone in the spot. It's just that sometimes some people are not going to step up unless you ask them to. So I think this conference to talk about leadership and citizenship is a great idea, especially in this 2020 year, because this year is requiring us to do more, to read more, to study more, to look at, again, most people in a presidential year just look at the president, look down ballot, but also look at ballot initiatives. That's right. Look at what people, because it takes a modest amount of signatures to get something on the ballot. And then if they just work their network, you look up and find that something, that you don't agree with. Although in California, it's really funny. One time we had four propositions on the ballot, and they all disagree with each other. They all passed. So now, then what do you do? But look down ballot, look at everything. But most of all, think about another one of my buddies who has left us, Ntozake Shange, from Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Was Enough. There is a line in that play that says, I found God in myself and I loved her fiercely. That's what I leave you with.
You all help me. Help me honor these, our leaders of wisdom. Applaud yourself, the leadership of the women of color in the Task Force Career Conference, one of the best conferences in the whole United States, 38 years. The leadership you see up here, these are the people in the green book. Stand up, recognize yourselves. We are empowered, we have the authority, we have the influence, and there's nothing that can stop us now.
Thank you. Weren't Dr. Coleman Burns, Dr. DeGrew, Dr. Malvo an awesome trio this morning? I am Catherine Weathers, a member of the Women of Color Task Force Executive Board. I would like to welcome to the podium Larita Thomas and Nashurin Price. Larita is the president of the Ann Arbor Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and will be making a special presentation on behalf of her organization to Dr. Malvo. Nashurin is an admissions coordinator in the School of Social Work and will be making a special presentation to Dr. DeGrew on behalf of the School of Social Work.
Good morning. I told you I'd be back. It gives me great honor as president of Ann Arbor Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, probably the largest affinity group Dr. Malveaux is a member of. We are over 200,000 college-educated women making a difference in the world. You heard that she leads our Social Action Commission. So, Dr. Malveaux, we are accountable in Ann Arbor for the work we're doing on the census to make sure every person is counted. And we are accountable for getting out the vote. We are inspired by your comments this morning, for your lifelong membership in the world of women becoming leaders, and for your dedicated and supreme leadership in Delta Sigma Theta Sorority. Would all members of Delta Sigma Theta please stand at this time as we thank her for coming to our city, to our community, and for her service in national, regional, and local leadership in our beloved sisterhood. Thank you, Dr. Malveaux. Appreciate you. It's a quick token, or your gift is our work.
Yes, absolutely.
That's our gift.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Greetings and great risings, beautiful people. And for those out of Detroit, what up, though? I can't forget you folks. I'm a native LA, but I understand the what up, though. Can't leave you out. My name is Nishawn Price, and I am a Women of Color Task Force member for over 10 years. And as stated, I am the School of Social Work Admissions Counselor, along with other things, coordinator, student services. We can just go down the list. Some of my students, whoop, whoop, will tell you. I'm so excited to be here with y'all, especially these beautiful, beautiful people, to share this space with these women. And I've had 2 days with them and just want to sit with them and join them as much as I can, because it's just been wonderful sitting at their feet of wisdom as I grew to know that you always, sit in the sages and learn, because I'm not young, but I'm not that old either. So the more I can learn from my elders, the more I'm willing to be able to share. So on behalf of Dean Lynn Videka of the School of Social Work, who was unable to be present today, I am honored to read the statement she prepared for Dr. DeGrew, a researcher, author, and a fellow social worker. So if you don't know that, now you know. I must say that Dr. DeGrew is my shero. I really thank you. I mean, my heart is just filled. This is my third, fourth time being in your presence. Last year in the snow, remember that. But it is a privilege to be able to deliver this tribute. So, without ado, I'm going to read what has been printed for me. Actually, it is written by the dean, so you'll hear what we have to say. I'm very sorry to be out of town and unable to deliver this tribute to Dr. DeGrew personally. It is a great honor to host Dr. DeGrew at the University of Michigan. The School of Social Work salutes Dr. DeGrew for her dedication to social work, social justice, for her work in social work education at Portland State University for over 2 decades, and for her insightful and transformational scholarship in her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, American Legacy of Enduring Injury and Healing, which lays bare to multi-generational impacts of slavery on descendants of enslaved Africans in the United States. Her book has been described as the balm that needs to heal ourselves in our relationships. Dr. DeGrew also developed the African American Male Adolescence Respect Scale, an important research tool that was published in the journal Research on Social Work Practice and measures pro-social attitudes of young Black men. Thank you, Dr. DeGrew, for teaching us so many social workers about the historical trauma and its legacy. And if you don't know, please go get the book. It's got a workbook. There's a lot. We talk about, I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit off cuff here, but we talk about post-traumatic slave syndrome a lot, about, military and, what they call third world country situations, and we live it right here. And as a descendant of African enslaved people myself and a Pan-African, this book and many other materials definitely opened my eyes to understand my family and the operation in which we are conditioned and how we have to really work on our healing and the healing of our community. So that was my statement. Thank you for your orientation towards strength and healing. We are pleased to offer you this memento from University of Michigan School of Social Work. We share with you a deep commitment to social justice and to dismantling the legacy of slavery. We learn from your transformative conceptualization and your empirical research. You offer our school a model of uniting social justice with empirical social science knowledge. Thank you for many contributions to the profession of social work, and today for your contributions to the University of Michigan community. Lynn Videka, Dean, and Carol Mowbray, Collegiate Professor of Social Work, on this date, March 2020.
Thank you, Larita and Nashoran, for taking time to come to honor two dynamic women today during the 38th Annual Women of Color Task Force Conference. Just a side note for the ladies that stood that are members of our sorority, Delta Sigma Theta, please check your email for the location for the picture that will be taken after the session. Thank you. Okay, now, I have a special presentation for our moderator, Dr. Patricia Coleman Burns. You can stay seated. All of three of you can stay seated. I'll come to you. The Women of Color Task Force is forever grateful to you as you always answer the call when needed, and you're simply a dynamic person to be around. Dr. Coleman Burns, also known as PCB, it gives me great pleasure to present you with this beautifully designed butterfly Matawi tile on behalf of the officers and members of the Women of Color Task Force. Dr. Joy DeGroot and Dr. Julian Malveaux, we are thrilled to have you here today as our keynote speakers as we start our 38th conference. Theme, Women on the Mission 2.0, Leadership, Citizenship, and Advocacy. We thank both of you for a fantastic discussion this morning. I'm certain that I speak for everyone when I say we look forward to taking the wisdom, advice, and words you've imparted this morning and apply them to our leadership, citizenship, and advocacy in every area of our lives. Every woman, every person in this room and that are watching live stream is on a mission. And it's not just any mission. It's Mission 2.0. And you have given us exactly what we need to begin. So on behalf of the Executive Board of the Women of Color Task Force and the University of Michigan, I am honored to present each of you with a beautiful peonies designed tile by Matawi Tile Works. We are truly honored to have you here today and appreciate both of you sharing with us this morning. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Before we close the opening session, and I need everyone to stay in the room, because aren't you doing some raffles? No raffles? But she has some announcements, and they're key announcements for you for the rest of the day, okay? We're going to bring Lisa Green to the stage, all right? Thank you.
Thank you. Is everyone enjoying themselves so far? Yes. Thank you so much. I have some important housekeeping items for the day. I believe she just read that. Wait, let me make sure. If you need any help throughout the day, conference staff will be wearing name badges marked with either purple, WTCF, or WCTF, Women of Color Task Force member ribbons, or with red CEW staff ribbons will be on hand to assist you. For those persons registered for the career conference, here is information about the workshops. The workshop sessions will be held in the Modern Languages Building, or MLB Building, the Michigan League, and North Quad. All conference venues are located on the Ingalls Mall on Central Campus. Please note that all workshops are full except for those being conducted on the first floor of the MLB auditoriums, 1200, 1220, 1400, and 1420. For the Modern Language Building's basement classrooms, the rooms that begin with the letter B, the first floor rooms are the large MLB auditoriums numbered 1200, 1220, 1400, and 1420. Second floor rooms are rooms that begin with the number 2. There will be signage in each building directing you to the classrooms. To assist with locating your rooms, there's a workshop room key in the center of your program booklet, and these are located inside your bags. So each bag should be holding one of your program booklets. The Michigan League is where you picked up your registration packet. There have been a few room changes. The morning workshop, A6, was canceled due to presenter illness, so those persons are encouraged to attend a session in one of the other 3 auditoriums on the first floor of the MLB building. However, A7 has been moved to the auditorium room 1200. For the afternoon session, the session Savvy Leadership has been moved to the Michigan League. Take the elevator or the stairs to the 3rd floor to get to this classroom. Greeters will direct you to your classroom. The networking lunch. Seating at lunch is open, and you are welcome to sit with your friends, but I hope you take the time to meet and network with someone new. The lanyard color designates your meal selection. Yellow for chicken, pink is for salmon, purple for steak, and green for the vegan entree. If you submitted a dietary request with your registration, please check your badge for a special card to give to your waiter at lunch. And networking. There is never too much networking. All day long, we encourage networking. After the last workshop, beginning promptly at 3:30, we will have a networking and reflection session. Please return to the 2nd floor of the Michigan League for this dynamic networking session with other conference attendees in the Hussey Room. Refreshments will be provided, and this is a great opportunity to share your thoughts and make your final connections with each other. We have vendors and exhibitors. We have a great group of vendors and exhibitors who are open throughout the day, located on the first and second floors of the Michigan League. Make sure you take some time around your schedule to visit with them. You'll definitely want to check out the sponsors table on the second floor because there's important information for you to share with you, as well as some great giveaways. Thank you so much for choosing to attend the 2020 Women of Color Task Force Conference, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Your first workshop will be starting in about 20 minutes. Have a great day, and remember the elbow bump or head nod instead of hugging. Take care.